everybody, and welcome. My name is Diane Cowan, and I am the Adult Services Librarian here at the Capitola Branch Library. I'd like to thank the Friends of the Capitola Library for refreshments today, and please help yourselves. I'd like to start out by acknowledging that the land we are on is the unceded territory of the Awaswas-speaking Yuki tribe. Today, the Amamutsun tribal band, comprised of the descendants of indigenous people taken to Mission Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during Spanish colonization of the Central Coast, is working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and heal from historical trauma. As we honor indigenous peoples as the original and ongoing stewards of this land, let us affirm our responsibility to confront the reality of our history of colonization and work to prevent the continuation of this harm. And before we begin, I'd like to address why this event was postponed and rescheduled. Prior to the original date, the library received a number of calls and emails opposing the event, largely concerned with Daniel's public statements on social media, which they believed might increase anti-Semitic violence in our community. Some of the people who raised these concerns are partners I've worked with and trusted for years, and they took a lot of time to talk with me at length about why and how this language felt harmful for them. So I realized that I needed to take time to learn more because I didn't want to cause harm. As a librarian and as an American, I am deeply opposed to censorship and never intended to permanently cancel the event. However, I did feel I needed to pause, educate myself further, and think carefully about protected speech and speech that causes genuine harm. My biggest misstep in that process was not reaching back out to Daniel at Howla and Unhe before making the decision to reschedule. That conversation should have come much sooner, and I'm sorry that it didn't. Since then, I've done more reading, had those overdue conversations, and with Daniel, Howla, and Unhe's help, made some changes to tonight's program that I think speak to some of the concerns that were raised while still giving Daniel's work the space it deserves. So for those who are here who shared their concerns about the library hosting this event, I want to also thank you for taking the time to help me understand. Earlier this week, I met with library administration, leaders in our local Jewish community, and a member of the Library Advisory Commission to discuss these concerns. I am truly thankful for the understanding gained through that dialogue. And I want you to know that I have heard the concerns that you have raised. And I do not take them lightly. They're a big part of why I paused the event to begin with. Professor Zunes' participation, space for audience questions, and other more recent changes to tonight's program came directly out of those conversations. And I understand that these changes do not resolve a deeper disagreement, but this event is not happening in spite of what you told me. It is happening differently because of it. Okay, so after Daniel's reading, we will have a Q&A, and I will be asking you all to adhere to a set of conversation agreements. And now I would like to hand it over to Howla, who will start us off and introduce Daniel.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Howla Jardali, and I come from Accra, an ancient seashore seashore city at the very northern tip of Palestine, where the Mediterranean meets the border of Lebanon. Gaza, another ancient seashore city, lies at the very southern tip of the Palestinian coast. Two cities, north and south, bound by the same sea, the same history, and today, the same grief and struggle. I want to begin by thanking the Capitola Library for hosting Daniel Reyes' reading. In a time when libraries are sanctuaries of memory, learning, and community, this space matters. And it is precisely because libraries matter that I might speak of what has happened to Gaza's libraries. Since October 2023, at least 13 public libraries have been destroyed in Gaza. The Great Omari Mosque Library, home to 20,000 rare manuscripts on medicine, law, and literature, saw most of its collection burned. The Islamic University Library lost over 240,000 volumes. The Central Archives of Gaza, 150 years of history, erased in a single strike. University libraries, school libraries, private collections, all reduced to rubble and ash. The United Nations has called this scholasticide, the systemic destruction of a people's educational and cultural life. A library is not just a building, it's a collective memory, a people's right to remember, a people's right to dream, and Gaza's memory is being erased. That's why we're here today, to speak, to listen, and to remember. I will now read a poem by Rafat Al-Arir, a Palestinian poet, professor, and co-founder of the We Are Not Numbers project, which helped young writers in Gaza tell their stories to the world. Al-Arir believed deeply that writing is resistance, and that storytelling was not a pastime, but an existential act of survival. He was killed by an Israeli airstrike in December of 2023, but his words continue to carry Gaza's voice beyond the genocide. The poem I'm about to read is called Over the Wall. It's about a Palestinian grandmother, a survivor of the 1948 Nakba, the catastrophe when over 750,000 Palestinians were expelled from their villages and towns to make way for the state of Israel. She was forced to leave behind her home, her olive and orange orchards, her wheat fields, her sheep and goats, even her cat and dog. She carried only the key to her house, believing that soon, after the ceasefire, she would return. But that return never came. Year after year, since December 1948, the United Nations General Assembly has passed Resolution 194, affirming the right of Palestinian refugees to return to their homes. Year after year, the world's nations vote in favor, and year after year, Israel blocks that return. Today, over 75% of Gaza's population are refugees or descendants of refugees from that very same Nakba. They are the grandmother's children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. They still hold the keys. They will remember the orchards, and they still insist on returning. That insistence, that refusal to forget the violation of their humanity is what Al-Arir captures in Over the Wall. One of my favorite poems, by the way. I will share it with you. There, points Grandma, she had a tent that was a home. She had a goat and a camel. She had a rake and a fork and a trowel. She had a machete and a water can. She had a grove and 200 plants. She had a child and another one and another one. There, she insists, I couldn't see because of the wall. I couldn't hear because of the noise. I couldn't smell because of the powder. But I can always tell. I am sure of Grandma, who always was and is still and will always be. She smells like soil and smiles like soil and blinks like soil when touched by rain. She has a house that's a tent. She has a key and a memory. She has a hope and 200 offspring. Grandma is here, but lives there, over there. Did you love that? Rafat Al-Arir wrote from inside the siege, bearing witness as his world collapsed around him. Daniel Reyes writes from outside it, but he writes in solidarity, recognizing that the struggle against occupation, displacement, and genocide is not only Palestine's struggle, it's a human struggle. In his book, 6 is for Genocide, Daniel adds his voice to that insistence. He doesn't claim to speak for Palestinians. He speaks with them, amplifying what Al-Arir called the powerless voice that refused to be silenced. And now it is my honor and pleasure to introduce Daniel Reyes, who will be reading to us from his book, 6 is for Genocide.
Thank you everybody for being here. Thank you to the library, Diane especially. She's been really working hard to make sure this program continued, and there was no push, even with all the pushback, whatever. Thank you to Onhe, to Dana, to Rolla, Alaydi, the fam sitting over here, everybody in this room. We could be doing anything else. This is a Saturday, and you guys chose to be here, which is like, man, that's why it was a little hard to come up here, just seeing all the people that wanted to support. I get choked up a little bit over nervousness, but also because of this type of love that sits in the room. Because what I wrote in this book isn't liked, So yeah, it's it was a lot. It took a lot to write this, but as somebody who considers themselves an artist or a writer or a human being, I had no other choice, no other option, but to take action in a way where it meant speaking for people who are losing their voices and their lives on a daily basis.
15 seconds.
I think that's important for each and every one of us. I think we're all talented in our own ways, and we all have love, empathy, and that comes from being human and from being a child. I think one thing we do forget is that we were once children, and that's something that, you know, this world will easily distract you from remembering that you were a child too once. And so that's why when I look at photos of Rola's family members, this is Alaydi. She's 7 years old. She's been living through a genocide for almost 3 years now. And these are the people, the faces, the names that constantly remind us and constantly keep us knowing that even though I'm nervous, even though I'm scared in some ways, I have to do it for this little girl right here. So my book is called 6 is for Genocide. I titled it 6 is for Genocide because of the shadow banning that happens with our social media, whether it's Meta or TikTok, whatever social media you use. Majority of them will suppress your news or whatever you're trying to say and speak up about what's happening in Gaza and Palestine. 6 is the number I use to replace the letter G in genocide, because they filter through these accounts when you're using words like genocide or Gaza or Palestine. You have to use symbols and numbers, so that way there's maybe less of a security. Less security is focused in on what you're trying to tell the world. When you say the word genocide, they immediately, a lot of people are losing their accounts, or don't get as many followers or views, because they want to hide what's happening. And there's a reason why we don't see it in our corporate media as much. And I know there's a lot more going on in this world as well, but this is a continuation over 1,000 days of genocide and on human beings who are suffering. And it has not stopped, and that's why I believe it is very important for us to continue to speak up for Palestine. And this is just my way of doing that. And I wanted to write something that wasn't just about poetry. It is Poems, Reflections, and Rants. So it's me reflecting on what's been happening. I know a lot of the times poetry can be very metaphorical or almost beautiful with the way people use words, and I wanted to give more of a direct way of telling you that there's a genocide happening and people need our voices to be their voice. I do really quickly just wanted to say also, it is my sister's birthday today. We could probably sing later. Like I said, we could be anywhere, and she chose to be here on her birthday. Or I guess maybe I chose the date. And anybody else who's celebrating a birthday or this month or something, happy birthday to you guys. So in the beginning of this book, it's a dedication. It's for the Alaydi family in Gaza, Palestine. I did pass around some names. I'm just going to go around kind of just in like a little snake formation, just for each person to read a name. And I'll start right here.
Salman.
Alma.
Yaman.
Larin.
Maye.
Ola.
Rama.
Lai. Hoya. Aman.
Medhat.
Musbaha. Nur al-Huda.
Rana.
Amal.
Shirin.
Salam Masba. Rana.
I think that was it. The reason why I did that, I wanted us to feel something other than just me up here speaking, because I think it's important for us to remember the names. And these are names that are still alive, and we're still working to help them survive, help them feed themselves and keep shelter in whatever way, however you can do that in such, in such circumstances. But that's one thing that we also forget, is that they will try to, what they're trying to do is wipe away the memories, the history, the names, the people, and their stories and that all. And that's why it's important to say these names, especially before, while they're still here. While they're still here. I have a little dedication in here for Dr. Alaydi. She's sitting in the back. And she's the one who inspired me to get this book finished. It is, like I said, this is a dedication to her family. Another way to fundraise for the family, because that in a lot of ways is very difficult to do, especially when a lot of our society doesn't find it important to fundraise for people of Muslim or Arab or in the Middle East. So this is the dedication. But I did want to ask one question. In the last 3 years, has anyone lost a family member? Feel free to raise your hand if you don't. It's fine. In the last 3 years. Were you able to mourn them in peace? My sincere condolences to your family members and to you guys. Have you ever felt shamed out of mourning the mass murder of your loved ones? Every night, you stay awake past God's bedtime, praying He saves your family. But because He was at rest when you sent your prayers, you wake up the next morning, a new family member murdered. And not only was it family, it was 60 others, men, women, children. They all had names. They were all made of the same godlike magic each and every human was born with. The only difference is they were born in Palestine. They were born into a life of oppression without any say, and some were born directly into the ongoing genocide we're still watching on our phones today. So you drag yourself to work in a way you've never done before, and you hold it together. Do not disturb or distract your colleagues with your problems, because in this country, your people, your family, are now widely considered subhuman, terrorists, and animals, including the children. So the question is no longer who would believe you. You're now faced with the question of who would care. It's been 686 days at the time of writing this, and the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza has yet to shake the world. We have grown comfortable in our complicity with the luxury to do nothing. But I hope these words will wake you before the rest of Rola's family is martyred. Pray for Gaza. Rola has lost over 200 family members in the last 34 or 34 months, the last almost 3 years. Over 200 family members that she wasn't able to mourn properly like the rest of us. This is still a part of the intro. In a perfect world, the good guys would be casted as follows: Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Donald J. Trump, Joe Biden, Benjamin Netanyahu, Dwayne Johnson, Pharrell Williams, Taylor Swift, Beyonce Knowles, Gal Gadot. The list goes on. But what do they all have in common besides being household names and most of them billionaires? They all believe that the Palestinian household and land belong to the fictional state self-proclaimed as Israel. A white European lie that started over 100 years ago, giving rise to the Zionist project to steal the land of Palestine in 1948 and make it a white Jewish safe haven. History did not start on October 7th, 2023. In the book, it's gonna have portions of like poems. It's gonna be kind of broken down as like poems, reflections, rants. Kind of the rants will be at the bottom like a little footnote. In this footnote on this page, it says IOF is the acronym for Israeli Occupation Forces. They're actually called IDF, or Israeli Defense Forces, but you can't be in defense as the illegal occupier. And throughout the book, I will have, you'll notice I put Israel in quotation marks all throughout this book. This signifies that Israel is not a real place. It is occupying the stolen land of Palestine. Therefore, it is fictional whether it says Israel on your Google Maps or not. Hashtag is not. If you have the book in your hand and you want to follow along at all, this is page 4. I wake up and I peel my body from the mattress, but have yet to peel my eyes from the live stream genocide. There is sunlight in my room, but the world is dark. I don't know where to start, but consider this book an entire text message from me to you. How will you respond? ... income. Page 5. Coffee mixed with emotions. You switch to decaf because watching a genocide on your phone for 700 days becomes the espresso shot. Then when decaf gets too strong, you switch to instant. Instant, like death by drone strike. Switchblade 600s from Arlington, Virginia. That sweet kamikaze effect they give you. Just right to leave a newborn's body pomegranate peel. Now, if we could just find a professional fruit photographer who also specializes in running through rubble with never enough time to grab their cake. I wrote this one, I'm going to give a little context to the majority of what I wrote this one when, it felt like I couldn't even drink coffee at a certain point because it was just a mix of watching the genocide on your phone live stream on social media and drinking coffee was just like too heavy on my heart. I didn't need the coffee to wake up. It was me watching what's happening that woke me up. And when I say Switchblade 600s from Arlington, Virginia, it's because the weapons manufactured in the U.S. are the ones being sent to murder innocent people in Gaza. 6. I've been obsessed with the sky lately, not short of breath, but a deep sigh lately. I'm not depressed, I'm terrified, frankly, of all the press that have died taping, the stories they've been under fire making. It's dangerous to open eyes, awaken. People like you and I praying, not only for a true saving, but an end to a genocide, maybe. And if you happen to pass this by, your view is as good as mine, blankly, staring up at the innocent sky, thinking, what if it was you and I, living, where bombs fall from God's eyes? After all, who's gonna stop him from weeping? If the world believes in a chosen people, born with rifles and Hitler Bibles, reading scripture scripted by Hitler, give it a title and call it Israel. That one's called the Schofield Reference Bible. The rant at the bottom of this page. Thank God there's a Bible that excuses Israel to steal people's land, murder hundreds of thousands of them, finance weapons and wield them against children, and build a society willing to wash, rinse, and repeat the savagery, all in God's name. Page 7. How we doing, guys? I know it's, the only difference between night and day are the decisions we make. One day we preach self-care, then the next we teach hate. One day we preach fresh air, then the next it's air we take. From Arab land and the displaced, there's no escape for them, but you can be the change. Even if it's just the change you were saving for a rainy day, a 5, a 10, a 20 could go a long way for the stomachs that are empty because we send bombs instead of cake. And so I actually have a little QR code down here on this page. It is no longer functional because GoFundMe deleted the fundraiser for Rolla's family. We did create a new fundraiser. It's on chuff.org now, it's not on GoFundMe. GoFundMe's been deleting families from Gaza's GoFundMe's throughout the genocide. And it's been very difficult for people to get those names back and the support back because sometimes all we see are those emails of updates from that GoFundMe, and we're like reminded that, oh yeah, like let me donate. I need, let me help this family, and that support is now gone. We have to restart, and we didn't want to do that with GoFundMe. It's out of our control. We went from like thousands of people's support to now we're just maybe 100 or less. So, and things are not cheap in Gaza when they are in need of food that is being blockaded by settlers and the soldiers, forcibly starved and not having any type of AC like we have in this room. We have tents that are burning up in there. There's infestation. There's all these things. There's rodents chewing at people's children while they're in their sleep, while trying to not drown because it's flooded. Page 8. The occupation has closed all borders, starved the people, bombed the safe zones, sniped babies, raped hostages, destroyed all universities, killed aid workers, killed Americans, killed doctors and journalists, lied about October 7th, set fire and bulldozed tents with families in them, burning and burying them alive. And you watch, and I watch. But who has the gravitas to say what's real or do anything at all? But you need Israel to do something more extreme before you can say anything in order not to offend them, the oppressor, who probably pays you to stay silent. Tell me, are you free? Page 9. Beware of the oppressor. They will try to convince you that a group of people who unite to resist their occupiers are the enemies. But who has all the weapons and technology? Whose narrative is all over mainstream media? Is it the resistance group called Hamas, or is it the terrorist organization called Israel? If you've ever been locked in a cage and forced to watch relatives and close friends die, you're likely from Gaza. Rant. This isn't some This isn't some fucking Hogwarts house sorting quiz. These are people's lives. But if it was, take your wand and create justice and liberation and end the occupation and the genocide of Gaza, Palestine, and make Israel Palestine again.
Yeah.
I'm going to run through a couple of short ones. Page 10. What do you see when you look at me? Do you see me as human? What if I told you I'm Palestinian? Will you see me as human then? This one's called Progressive Accept Palestine. I titled this Progressive Accept Palestine because what we're seeing now as we're waking up to a genocide every day is that what we once thought as liberalism or somebody who's leftist or whatever the case is, somebody we looked up to in a democratic way, they put everybody's human rights. They may or may not put everybody's human rights, but they play like they do in front of themselves. They put their human rights in front of themselves, except for Palestinian human rights. Why are they the exception? Why do their lives not matter? Everybody else's, it's okay to say free whoever, but you can't say free Palestine. I used to wonder what type of magic the universe hid. Now all that wonder has become a distraction from what our world thinks of a Palestinian kid. They are a universe. That was page 11. I wrote that one because I think does anyone write poetry? You got poets?
Oh, yeah.
I think we all got it. I think as a poet, for me, I've thought a lot about the universe. Like I'm sure all of us do. We like people horoscopes and astrology and whatever we think about the universe, astronauts, but space. And sometimes you think about your little life that's here on this planet, and you wonder what's out there, and that's kind of what happens when you start writing. Is you're incapable of knowing everything, and that's why you write. You're building worlds inside your head, and these are worlds. The people of each and every person in here is a world, is a universe, and we forget that because we're so lost in space a lot of the times. It's just a reminder to take a step back and say, well, why are we so focused up there when we can't figure it out here? Page 12. Carbon footprints and atomic bombs. I remember when Grandma made me mow the lawn, not knowing that term meant something different to the colonizer's mom, telling her children it's okay to drop bombs as long as the world believes they're not human. and you do it every few months, so the world believes it's normal. When it's time to drop more on their heads, and their beds, and their cribs, and their legs, and their ribs, and their live, laugh, love signs, hung above all the pots and the lids. And what if we make the lies so damn big that by the time you're reading this, none of them will exist? I titled this one Daniel Reyes. She is one of the settlers in Israel, and she's very proactive in the genocide and in the theft of homes in Palestine and West Bank. And she is an organizer that a part of an organization called Howla. You can look that one up, or you can look up Daniel Reyes, and you will find videos of her, and she's a psychopath. Page 13. Not sees, not sees, not sees, not sees, not cease, Nazis, Nazi Israel. The U.S. has vetoed 6 ceasefire resolutions since 2023, the 6-day ceasefire and the 2025 ceasefire that lasted for 6 weeks were both violated by Israel in less than 24 hours of being in effect. Every ceasefire deal is performative and a distraction. They know that if they make headlines about some deal being made, people will only read the headlines, not the full story, and people will stop paying attention. Naive people will read the headline and say, see, a ceasefire. They are moral. They are the good guys. Then tell me something. Why is it when a Palestinian person is killed, you feel nothing? Why do you let the word war influence your morals? Is it out of convenience, hate, are you misinformed, or just racist? How many of us in here love money? Page 14. There's money to be made, but I prefer the currency of love and the fervor of being unafraid to say, free Palestine. Yeah, I definitely wrote that one because we're so distracted by our jobs and making money and putting money above everything, profit over people. And that is the exact opposite of what we should be doing. But unfortunately, we all have to make a living. We all have to bow down to the man and hate each other as we zoom past each other on the streets or in our cars or in the hallways or wherever we're at. We're just trying to make that next dollar. $15. Deep breaths and sighs. It depends on who you ask about the prefix A-N-T-I, anti. What's the first word that comes to mind? Now let's try the suffix C-I-D-E. Does the false pretense of one give the right to commit the other? Yeah, that one's pretty. It could go any way. It could go so many different ways. How you perceive the word anti, or the prefix anti, or the suffix side. C-I-D. When I asked what people were thinking of. Page 16. Did anyone watch the World Cup?
Yeah.
This one's for you. The Americans are so obsessed with USA yet would rather vacation in a place where the dollar is made of gold and the weather is amazing. They choose destinations based on lies they've been told, like, come see what's awaiting. The same Americans who call other countries a shithole, until it's time to put on the leg, the keffiyeh, or the gold. Rant. Watch the Olympics. So much money is spent to watch countries compete for the manliest country in sports, even when some of these countries are killing each other in actual wars, displaying who has the most manly weapons. And let's not forget the Olympics venues cost billions to build, using government subsidies to foot the bill with taxpayer dollars. But we can't build homes for the poor or stop a genocide. Priorities first, right? It amazes me that this is the world we live in. Page 17. One day when life slows down, I'll ditch the Keurig and replace it with these new high-tech coffee makers called a French press. I'll take the long way going half the speed limit with my hazards blinking for all the busy bees trapped inside my rear view. I'll visit winter towns just to watch the snow fall on the shoulders of strangers and their emotional support dogs. I'll retake that sewing class just to patch things up with my ex-best friend for never being there when they felt depressed. I'll feed that bird and its family that routinely sings in the background of my dreams, becoming synonymous with my subconscious fears I sometimes conquer before rolling out of bed. I'll tell the truth about all the things I write about and how they're really just subliminal excerpts that no one is emotionally adjusted for. And how could we be when the last one that you ignored had no effect on how your day went, so you think. Rant. They can ignore the genocide, but don't stop talking about Palestine. Life has not slowed down for Gaza. The bombs are getting bigger, and the land is getting smaller, but the bodies being killed are larger because Israel is running out of children to slaughter. And that is as truthful as it can be with what's happening as they're creating the yellow line in Gaza and continuing to steal more of the land in Gaza. They're already up to 70% of theft of the land of Gaza since the genocide started. And right now, Rola's family is living close by to one of the yellow lines, trying to survive. And it doesn't even matter if you cross that yellow line. They tell you if you cross that line, you're in open season. But it doesn't matter. They'll murder you anyways. So it doesn't really matter, but it's their way of saying, oh look, you accidentally crossed the line. I guess that's execution time. This one is called degrees over Celsius. I know it's summer, so excuse the rain. I sometimes wonder about climate change, how the earth gets warmer and we get smarter. But the only degrees that matter are the leaves that scatter and become flame. I wonder who we blame for what comes after. I try to remain sincere. But what good is a brain in a disaster? Catastrophic like that one episode of How I Met Your Mother or The Bear. It chases after you when all you've done in life is play it safe. So as you sit in a classroom of your peers, ignoring the death sentence the world has, given less than 20 years, Try to understand the work it takes to break the simulation. Because it's not just the Palestinians who are facing extermination. Soon, you'll walk the stage at graduation in a fireproof suit and an oxygen tank that they charge you for as part of your tuition. This is why we're climate change is accelerating. Sorry. Well, it's not because of the plastic, it's because of our military, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Page 19. I miss routine and all the American things I can do. But when you've seen all the American things we have done, the Coca-Cola bubbles flatline, a bag of McDonald's becomes the bag that a little boy uses to save what remains of his brother's flesh who was just blown to pieces by an airstrike. The shampoos we used were made at the expense of an entire neighborhood, desolated. The coffee, well, it's shit, Starbucks. And if you like Amazon's free shipping, you'll love a free Palestine. I miss routine, but not enough to support a genocide. I did want to do a little something. We have, does anyone in here have, or who, raise your hands, who has a boycott app downloaded on your phone? Wow.
Raise your hands if you don't have it and you want to download it and get a little treat.
Because Coca-Cola, we are definitely not drinking Coca-Cola. We have a drink Palestina. There's also Palestine Cola. We only got 5, I think. But for those who don't have an app but would download that today or here today.
Just for this.
For this. Raise your hand. We need 5 though. We'll try to get like.
You can download either No Thanks or Boycott. I recommend you do it even if we can't
What
give
is
you
the app?
Cola, but
The boy cat app. B-O, like boy and little cat.
yeah.
Boycott?
Yeah, like Boycott, but I guess they were trying to be funny. Yeah.
No, what's the other one? No.
No thanks. Where is our hands? Where? That's it.
Go.
No, we didn't make this.
Where can we buy those? Are they marketed?
You know what? Where do you get yours from?
So, yeah, if you guys, so we're from Monterey.
I don't know. We'll say that for later.
So, you're right,
The marketing later.
Yeah, we'll say that for later. Okay. I'm just trying to make sure you guys aren't falling asleep on me. So part of this page 19, I have the rant on the bottom. Supporting brands that fund the genocide of Gaza makes you complicit. Boycott. Use the Boycott app or No Thanks app to scan items at the store that are directly tied to funding Israel's economy and their means to afford weapons to kill children, and stop giving your money to those companies. Boycotting works. Just look at what boycotting Disney did when they removed the late night show host Jimmy Kimmel. Disney lost billions overnight, so they were forced to give Jimmy his job back. I wonder why liberals will boycott Disney when a rich white man loses his job, but have no desire to boycott Disney, knowing Disney funds the slaughter of children in Gaza. Page 20. Imagine viewing yourself as mentally weak because you can't single-handedly stop the genocide in Gaza. But look at the world around you, take a look, and you will see. People drinking Starbucks knowing that company supports the slaughter of children. Notice how no one is disrupting the status quo. Those people are mentally weak, not you. I'll take a venti gluttony, please. I hope nobody drinks Starbucks.
Yeah.
Page 22. Here on earth, the right to breathe is on the chopping block. Soon we'll be packaged and fed to cosmic voids, deprived of extravehicular mobility units, or simply put, spacesuits. And every form of currency will take our place as prisoners of gravity, but more so, prisoners of the ruling class. Rant. APAC would fund a Department of Mass Body Disposals at NASA if they had one. APAC is the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, and they are most likely responsible for the assassination of JFK.
Next book.
This page 25, I definitely wanted to say, I wrote, it was just thinking about what it was like being a kid. It's very short, but you think about being a kid, but you also think about your family's kids or friends' kids, and the dichotomy of us living in a safe world or safer country or city, opposed to what Palestinians have to live through. Somewhere in the middle of drawing a bath for your child and readying supper for multiple mouths, there are children bathing in their own gore and being starved for being born in an occupied town. Yet you're the one complaining about how hard your life is. I just think it is very easy for us to feel that way too. Like, because we're living in a system that we complain about on a daily, like every day. There's something to complain about, just in our own personal lives, and it gets easier to continue to complain and blame and point fingers. And there's so many things we could point fingers at. But I think one thing that started getting me to reflect and realize and just appreciate some form of your life was knowing that somebody has it worse, and that somebody are the people in Gaza and Palestine. Imagine preaching about God in your music, on your Instagram, to your kids, on your podcast, at church, but never saying a single word about the slaughter of over 20,000 children being broadcast live every day for the last 23 months and counting. If you've ever wondered, this is a quote, if you've ever wondered what you would have done during the Holocaust, you're doing it right now. I don't know who said that, but it's pretty, it definitely was one that, you hear a lot and inspired a lot of what I was writing in this book.
That rationalization is being used for attacks against Jews generally. So, who's the Nazi?
What's that say?
That rationalization that you just gave is being used to rationalize attacks against Jews generally.
We're gonna let that pass.
We're talking about Gaza, but what he's saying is incendiary against Jews.
No,
Your interpretation.
I'll
I think
just say
that's your
this.
interpretation.
If you've ever wondered what you would have done during the Holocaust, you're doing it right now. People have been silent. It's about the silence. It's about the silence that we are watching what's happening, and we're silent. That's what this was about. It's the fact that you can look away while you know that there are people being slaughtered on a daily basis. Innocent people. That's what that was about. Page 27. The history of the world is not all mystery. There are documented wars and genocides, some of which we say, I love that era. The books and films that portray these atrocities. I cannot believe people suffered through those dark times. Hashtag never again. So tell me, are you waiting for the book or the movie to come out before you can speak up about the side of history your silence tells me you're on? Rant. We all love a good Holocaust movie to make us feel better about ourselves, but we all hate being bombarded with videos of Palestinians being genocided by Israel in real time. If it's happening in real life, it's not worth our viewership. We like our feasts imaginary, so we can ask our friends if we look fat in this shirt, expecting them to say no. Got any Friends fans? The show?
Used to.
Used to? Page 28. In this era of mindless scrolling, where empathy goes to die, overstimulated by things that make you laugh, understimulated by things that make you cry. It's like watching a horror film, then going home to binge 2 seasons of Friends. The one where Phoebe runs, but not as fast as Palestinians run from genocide. Ross Geller is a Zionist in real life, by the way. That's probably why some of you don't watch Friends.
Sir?
29. 25 years into the millennium, the ship has been steered by wealthy men. Time is being sold for starving wages. Drinking water comes in plastic bottles. Price gouging is mistaken as inflation. Housing is being used for vacations. Pretty soon we'll rent the oxygen, and landlords will rewrite the Bible, and Muslims will be wiped from history. February will be too woke for southern states, so instead of adding one more day, they'll take away an entire month, and you won't say a word or lift a finger for human rights. The children are fucked. What we allow them to get away with in Gaza will eventually make its way to the States. Gaza is a litmus test, and we're failing as a collective world. But don't give up. That's exactly what they want us to do. P.S. I wish Zionism was a conspiracy. And I think with that one, reading that one is very reflective of the times we're in right now, because of what we're witnessing just a lot around our own cities, our own towns, with ICE kidnapping people, stealing people from their families, and murdering people. And using tactics that they were trained to use from the Israeli forces. These are, it's definitely a warning. We've been, I think anyone who's Palestinian or who knew that there was something happening in Gaza and Palestine for the 78 years that it's been happening has been trying to warn us, and now that it's here, we're all just fucking not knowing what to do. We're all asleep. We're all so consumed by our phones, by our work, by making money, by holidays, by every little thing that they want to distract us with.
By intimidation.
Yes.
I haven't seen it, but has anyone seen the movie Oppenheimer? Nice. This one is called Open Air Prisonheimer. Maybe this genocide will be Christopher Nolan directed one day. Maybe then the Oscars will have something to say. Maybe Leonardo DiCaprio will play Genocide Joe once he's old and gray. Except we all know Nolan has a thing for Inception, so the truth isn't always on display in plain sight. Maybe it's day and night, the way he directs versus the journalists who are actually losing their lives on camera. Maybe the material just isn't right for his taste. Maybe it's too early to say anything. Maybe the people he's inspiring are being wiped away. Maybe the science is still too hard to explain, or maybe the bomb isn't big enough for the Americans' privileged little brains. Gaza is considered an open-air prison. This is a plant where it's an open-air prison. I'm going to read a House paper. Page 40. What is normal? We tell ourselves that our simple everyday pleasures and luxuries are normal, but that our shortcomings are attacks on our sanity. Attacks, some say, on humanity. Your car breaks down, your pants no longer fit, your friends outgrew you, it rains a little bit, and you throw a fit asking why God would do this to you. All of it. Your whining exists at the same time over 100 children lose their lives daily. And to them, this has become normal. Not knowing why they are running, but run with no time to worry about bathing or the disappearing sun. Because every day feels like night as we fill our darkness with Christmas trees and gifted guns. We call this normal where we're from. Page 67. The bees have fled the land, uneased by artificial buzzing of drones orbiting children at play for 24 hours, outlasting the sun. Drones that use modern-day technology, updating on the fly, lurking amongst the rubble, surveilling, bidding on facial recognition, whether controlled by a soldier remotely operated or fully autonomous, making decisions at the behest of some tech bro's flawless coding embedded into the drone's natural-born DNA of spying terrorists. If only these drones knew who the real terrorists are. Even the bees are at risk of being collateral damage. Rant. When Palestinians see the birds of the bees still playing amongst the rubble, a tiny bit of hope is restored. But for how long before the bombs fall again? Here they come. Page 76. These people's lives are being broadcast every day, bloodied, in pieces, mangled, heaving, holding on to life that doesn't seem worth holding on to. Live streamed are the most tragic scenes they'll ever experience, the most tragic scenes we'll ever witness. You might feel helpless that your posts on social media aren't stopping the genocide. But while you feel helpless, their organs and their headless bodies are being exposed to the world, normalized in between every meme and every text message ringing off your phone. 724 days of ongoing annihilation. At this point, we're at over 1,000 days. We should all be sick to our stomachs and organizing against our politicians funding the genocide. This one is called, this is like a web report, page 81. We're not protesting, we're mourning. Have you seen the news? Maybe not on television, but it's all over social media. Maybe they can televise the genocide in between the weather and sports. I wonder what that would sound like. Let's go to our weatherman in Israel to tell us the weather in Gaza. Oh hey Don, expect thunder today. Bombs will be raining down. Make sure you take your most sentimental belongings because you won't have a home to go back to. Oh, and pack light. Everything you own has to fit miraculously inside a single garbage bag. And I hope you packed your hiking boots. You're gonna need them for the mountains of rubble on the road to safety. Where is safety, you ask? Hold on. Let me finish printing these leaflets that will drop on you, giving you 15 minutes to evacuate before we drop the next wave of US-made bombs. Here, go to the south where it's safe. The south is being massacred. Well, you can't stay here and you can't leave Gaza. I guess you'll have to play our game and try to survive. The catch is, you only get one life. Subtract 3 hearts from the top right portion of the screen. Much better. Good luck and stay dry. I think got like a couple minutes left, yeah? Are we doing like Q&A at like the 15 mark?
Yes.
This is the last one. Page 99. Six is for October 6th, and all the days before it, that Israel has murdered Palestinian land and people for the last 77 years. Labib Damaidi, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's the name. Labib Damaidi was a 19-year-old Palestinian boy who was killed on October 6, 2023 by Israeli forces, helping Israeli settlers vandalize and attack neighborhoods in the West Bank, Palestine. Settlers taking their usual stroll to harass and steal more Palestinian land with the backing of military forces shooting tear gas at families while simultaneously allowing settlers to arm themselves against defenseless Palestinian people, minding their own fucking business. This is the role of Israel. They are worse than a migraine that goes away for a day, but comes back each and every day, more rabid and foaming at the mouth. Provoking the Palestinian to give the settler a reason to kill while their military watches or executes the plan for them. 28,105 days of settler violence and military occupation to kill Palestinians with whatever excuse and made-up reason they wish. All with impunity from the white supremacist world we live in. This one is called They Have Names. The Rant. Shout out Mosati, he couldn't be here today, he's a Palestinian poet. He does have a play that he holds around the Bay Area, it comes to Monterey. Hopefully soon to Santa Cruz he'll hold his play. It's called They Have Names. Shout out Mosati, a Palestinian poet, playwright, and artist from the Bay Area for his masterful play titled They Have Names. To be Palestinian, you have to keep reminding the world that you're not a number. The day you stop reminding them is the day Israel exterminates all of Palestine without the world knowing. And the US will keep the genocide of Palestine an even stronger secret than the Epstein files. Thank you.
Yes.
So before we go to Q&A, I just want to kind of share some basic conversation agreements that I would like us all to adhere to. And then I'm also going to ask Professor Stephen Zunes to come up, give a teeny, extremely brief kind of historical context, and then we'll go to questions. So, the agreements. Be curious and listen to understand and use active listening skills. Be respectful, do not interrupt or talk over others, and use respectful language. Use inclusive language. My pronouns are she, her. If you want to share your pronouns before speaking, please do so. Refrain from stereotyping. Critique ideas, behavior, policies, not people. Look for areas of agreement or shared values, and take an interest in sharing, or take an interest in differing beliefs and the opinions of others. And as much as possible, speak from your own experience. And with that, so hopefully we can agree to that. Is that too much? All right. So thank you, Professor Zunes, for being here. He is also available to answer questions about, the history, politics, whatever, blah, blah, of the region. So.
Thank you, and I just really appreciate, even though I am a professor at the University of San Francisco, where I'm in the Department of Politics, and I direct the Middle Eastern Studies program. I'm a Santa Cruz resident. That artists, whether they be poets or musicians or actors or other cultural workers, are able to to express in ways that we academics cannot some important truths, even though as academics I might disagree with one thing with certain specifics. So again, I want to thank you for that. I just want to mention briefly about genocide. Genocide is defined as efforts to destroy in whole or in part a particular ethnic, religious, or racial group. And I want to underscore in part, because we're not talking about something on the level of Holocaust. The Holocaust, I don't think comparisons to the Holocaust are fair. But there is a broad consensus of international Holocaust scholars, international legal scholars, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, various UN agencies, B'Tselem, which is the leading Israeli human rights group, that what Israel's been doing in Gaza does indeed constitute a genocide. It's not the only genocide going on in the world right now. Myanmar, Sudan are two others. Gaza's gotten our attention because, one, it was in an urban area, not in a way off in the middle of nowhere, so we could see it in real time on our phones, on our computers and television. And also the U.S. is culpable, vetoing otherwise unanimous UN Security Council resolutions that could have ended it, providing the weapons that had. So we feel a certain amount of moral and legal responsibility, and that's why I think it's become such a passionate kind of issue. But I should also mention, if you look in the past few decades, this is not the only genocide the U.S. has supported. The Pakistan's genocide of Bengali Hindus in 1971, the Guatemalan junta's genocide of indigenous peoples in the Guatemalan highlands in the early 1980s, Indonesia's genocide in East Timor, that 24 years occupation, and very similar, and there was denial by the United States, just as our governments denied the genocide in Gaza. Nixon covered up for the genocide in Bangladesh. Reagan famously said of General Reyes, the architect of the Guatemalan genocide, that he was given a bum rap. Successive presidents denied the East Timor genocide. I remember Clinton's Assistant Secretary of State for Asia saying that the fact that East Timor's population went from 600,000 to 400,000 in the case of the occupation was not a genocide, but the legacy of Portuguese colonial neglect. And this is why I try to, and also I should mention that Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, others that documented these, were also attacked as being biased, just like they're being attacked, for documenting war crimes, by Israel. And this is one reason that I tend to de-emphasize AIPAC. Because frankly, we've been doing this kind of stuff for a long time. We don't need a powerful ethnic lobbying group to force our hand. I think we would have supported the genocide in Gaza regardless, just as we supported these other genocides. So I'm cautious about overemphasizing AIPAC, whether you're on and exaggerating the role, whether it be about Gaza or the JFK assassination or other things. We need to see it within the context, frankly, of U.S. imperialism. And of course, the criticisms of U.S. policy back then, we were labeled as communist. Now we hear the term anti-Semites. And we should acknowledge, though, there are real anti-Semites within the pro-Palestinian movement, a minority to be sure, but if it's there, we need to call them out, just like there are real communists among some of the solidarity groups during the Cold War. But that it's important, so we don't want to have a crying wolf phenomenon, where the real there's so many false charges of anti-Semitism we're not aware and we need to be able to call out when it really does exist. But there is a defensiveness. I mean, when we see our country being involved in this and culpable of this, when we see this going on, people get angry. People rant. People, there's a lot of emotions up. And sometimes it's hard to hear. It's hard to hear that our country is complicit in yet another genocide. And if you're Jewish, or you're a sensitive liberal, it really hurts, the fact that Israel is the world's only Jewish state. And and you always have to wonder, is someone who criticizes Israel because they're opposed to genocide and oppression and occupation and apartheid anywhere, or are they finding an excuse to go after the world's only Jewish state? There's only one black state. You can imagine, even if they were doing the same things that Israel's doing, you can imagine that African Americans and a lot of good liberals would be similarly defensive. So again, this doesn't mean we can't speak the very painful truths of what are going on and challenge it. But I think we need to be aware of the sensitivity and be able to listen and hear people who feel personal about this and are very, very concerned. And finally, I just want to underscore that ultimately justice for Palestinians and security for Israelis are not mutually exclusive, but mutually dependent on the other. And while we need to both recognize the asymmetry in power that is between the two sides, we also need to recognize the common humanity. And I think that people who do speak to the suffering of the people, as our speaker did today, we need to hear them, even if it's sometimes uncomfortable, even if we might take issue with some of the specifics, because that is appreciating that humanity is crucial for healing and for working for justice. Those are my general comments. I'm happy to talk about very more specifics, and obviously there will be questions for our speaker as well. Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna open up to
Yep.
Q&A.
Q&A.
Before we start that, I do want to just mention my books are available in the back for afterwards, just so you know where to get. And I don't receive any of the profits. None of it all goes straight to the Alaydi family in Gaza.
Is there more than one edition of the
the first copy that I did, I'll definitely get you a like the newer edition. That was on me, sorry. Does anyone have a question?
What do you personally regard as high-quality sources of information on the subject besides, say, like Dropsite or Zeteo? Because I know a lot of people rely on social media, but I find with the algorithm, I just don't want to support those outlets. Where do you look for information?
I'm a social media guy. But does anyone have one that they can offer up? Just as like a,
What's the question?
I do.
like,
Democracy Now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
democracy? Yeah, oh, I love democracy.
I give them money every month.
Yeah.
The Cradle is a really good one.
Yeah.
The Cradle is a news source specifically about West Asian news, and it takes from news sources, Israeli news sources, like Iranian. It takes from news sources in multiple languages throughout the region and aggregates them, and then it also will take like social media posts by officials or prominent people from the different parties, right, in the region, and will sort of synthesize a lot of that. And it's a very broad but also in-depth source. Thecradle.co.
Anyone else?
Several times, at least twice during your poetry, you called Israel a white European or white colonial society, but approximately 55% of Israelis, including 20% were Muslim and Christian, are dark-skinned from the Middle East, including Jews who were expelled from Arab countries between 1948 and 1960. So that's an inaccuracy that you are, propounding here. Any comment?
Who's in power in Israel?
I would just interject to say that the statistics there are certainly true. But Zionism was originally a European movement. And if you look at the early Zionist conferences in the late 19th century, they were quite explicit about colonizing Palestine. It was very much
Decolonizing from British.
It was European. It was a European colonial project. Now remember, this is the age of nationalism, and so French, Jewish nationalism, Zionism, like French nationalism, Dutch nationalism, British nationalism, German nationalism, of course, had certain underlying racist assumptions. So Zionism was not unique in this regard. But I appreciate how those who see Zionism as a national liberation movement for oppressed people, but also definitely had colonial settler aspects. And in fact, and even today, it is the Ashkenazi Jews are the ones who definitely overwhelmingly dominate the politics and the economy and the like of Israel. So again, I appreciate your comment because at the end.
He didn't ask you about Zionism. He asked you about the ethnicity in Israel.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree. I agree with him. The ethnicity is correct.
His majority, what would be considered black or brown in this country?
Yes, again, they're not the people who are on the top, who essentially make the policies, run the country, run the economy, etc. Yeah.
Kind of like the U.S.
Another question.
Someone back there.
Yeah, I just have one more to go back to the sources question from before. Makdisi Street is really quite good. Four Brothers, academics, Lebanon, UCLA, sometimes in Palestine. Related to the Saids, they're very good, really wonderful conversations about what's going on in the whole area. I really get a lot out of it. Makdisi Street, it's a Makdisi.
Could you repeat that, because I can't hear that, what she said?
Makdisi Street?
Makdisi Street is a podcast.
What was the last thing you said that you spelled out?
I spelled out Makdisi, the name, Makdisi Street.
M-A-K-D-I-S-I.
Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for being here with your positive intentions. My question is to the professor, as we watch this terrible war in Iran escalate, what are your fears for the Palestinian people?
I think that for a long time, Israel and many of its supporters have really tried to focus on Iran and the threat of Iran, both legitimate and exaggerated, in many ways as a distraction from what's happening in Palestine. I think more and more Americans, when it comes to Israel versus Palestine, there's increasing sympathy for the Palestinians, but Israel versus Iran, given the nature of the regime and everything, there's generally more sympathy for Israel. So I think really putting Iran as the big boogeyman out there, is something that is somewhat advantageous for those who want to preserve the status quo in Israel and Palestine. Having said that, I think it's important to note that the U.S. war is not being done with Israel, is not being done for Israel. I mean, the U.S. has been going after, has opposed any kind of strong, independent Iran from the time we overthrew the Mossadegh in 1953 with the CIA, siding with Iraq in the Iran-Iraq war, and the so-called tanker war, when the Bush administration was arming Kurdish and Baluchi separatists and the like. None of that had anything to do with Israel. So I think it's important we not blame Israel. I mean, there is some indication that Netanyahu may have pushed Trump into to think of an overly optimistic scenario of the outcome. That was indeed a factor, but again, I want to be careful not to extend that. But unfortunately, again, while in the other conflicts, like Iran, indeed we saw this in the early days of the Iraq War as well. Israel's often used this as an excuse to clamp down, even further. And it reminds me of the old African proverb, an elephant's fight, the grass gets trampled.
Thank you. Thank you for your writing. What's happened in Gaza has made me very much ashamed to be an American. I never felt that shame before because I'm brown. This settler consciousness is a long pattern. We've experienced it in the United States on the East Coast. I'm Mexican, so I experienced it in the Southwest. That was settler consciousness. And so what we can do here is not point our finger at Gaza or Israel, although it makes me angry what's happened there, but look to our own country and finally resolve the question of settler history, resolve it in our own country, make a model of ourselves in the United States, like they've done in New Zealand, like they've done in Canada, and say settler practices with violence and genocide, what happened to Native Americans, is not right. It should go encoded, and it should be a worldwide consciousness of a new awareness and a limit. We had no limits. We watched it on television. When it happened to Native Americans on the East Coast, we didn't watch it. When it happened to my people on the West Coast and California, we didn't watch it. But I watched it with my eyes. I have to live with those visions. I have to think about those mothers, those grandmothers, and those children. So, if America wants to do something, stop the tax dollars going to Israel, bomb and second of all, look to our own communities to do resolution work. There's a lot of work to be done on resolution. That's where we need to learn from one another. Yada, yada, yada. The smartest man in the room doesn't have the right answer. Okay? Us talking to each other, that's how we come to the right answer, or listening to one another. And it's not always easy to listen. It really isn't. I know that. And good for you that you found a medium to express your feelings, with words and your stories and your history. Keep writing. Keep writing. Thank you.
God bless you for your courage and your confidence and your ability to do what you're doing right now in the face of a lot of opposition, where you should be welcomed and we should be ashamed of what's going on, all of America. And so, again, kudos to you for your courage and keep it up. Because if things are honestly changing, seeing how much money is being poured into races for the chosen people and the good ones. And hopefully they win. Thanks.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for sharing your poetry with us today. And I heard some themes come up in your poetry that really reflected my own experience of isolation. Like, how do I reconcile witnessing and going about my day-to-day and holding both of those at the same time? And there's many ways to find community and solace over these last 3 years. And I'm just curious, like, what artists have brought you solace through, especially sharing your poetry, and what kind of community have you found through sharing your poetry?
Artists that kind of inspired what?
Or just like gave you solace, yeah, inspired or soothed you or that you connected with?
Yeah. I guess one, it's being glued to your phone and seeing, the different Palestinian like content creators or whoever, has been speaking out for so long. Those people, for sure, Rolla, and her family, and it's also getting to know not just Rolla but also her family members. These are the people that are living through this and are suffering. And when you start to create those type of bonds and connections to people that are actually living it, that's where the inspiration comes, and then everything else kind of falls into place as far as the inspiration from outside of that. Because you're really just trying to compare. I'm really just trying to compare how I'm living my life versus in comparison to what somebody in Gaza is living. And I'm just constantly trying to, and I'm looking at everyone in this room and everyone, I don't know what we had to do to get here today, but something, probably was blocking us from even showing up or doing whatever we had to do, but we got here. And that is another portion of when I look into somebody's eyes or see a face, I think about those things, like what are we going through as individuals that inspire us to want to make a difference or love on one another or tell stories and want to say and speak up for Palestine and Gaza.
Just wanted to, again, thank you for your words, and I'm wondering, something you just spoke about right now is what you live your life thinking about, this incredible folks that you come in contact with or haven't had, or most of us won't be able to come in contact with anymore. I'm wondering, how do you, if you are able to find or practice joyful resistance in the face of so much things, I think about some of my cousins who are facing cartel violence in Mexico right now and don't have the opportunity to be in the redwoods or sip a coffee of Cat and Cloud, but how do I embrace and give myself the permission to, how do you give yourself the permission to feel that love that will continue to push you forward as an activist and help other people see what's wrong as well?
Surrounding yourself with good people, as your community of people that I think getting I'm a part of Monterey Palestine Solidarity, and we've become this group of friends who are not only working on ways to get our city to know what's happening, but also we become friends in the process, and I think that's important. And it was very hard in the beginning because you didn't know who to turn to, who to speak to. Is anyone else seeing this? And when you find those people, that's when it all starts to make a little more sense, and you're able to at least cope a little bit with each other and have conversations. And I think having those conversations help a lot because it's just not something that any of us want to be having conversations about. We want to be doing, like you said, going to Cat and Cloud, having coffee, not having our day interrupted by watching a child get bombed or whatever. But that's the reality. We have to remember to keep those stories alive and keep watching so that way we don't forget, because it's slowly getting out of the media and out of media's attention. And yeah, I think one is just it's really just building somewhat of a community for yourself and you know, not forgetting to like to enjoy a good laugh. Yeah. I'm gonna go with you. Or let's go.
Okay, so I want to refer to a couple of comments that were said. One of them to your comment as Mexican American, Native American, and I mean, since my youth, I realized I could just see the comparison that the Mexican people I see are occupied people. It's settler colonialism. It's the same thing. It's a conscientization that has kind of been repressed so much. And we hear you talk, and it needs to really come to the consciousness. Okay? This is a settler colonial project in the United States. And we have to come with compassion and understanding to know that this is what it is. And so that we become liberated, okay? Because they are occupied people. Number two, there was a question about Israel and Zionism being a white settler colonialist project. And thank you so much for clarifying that. So, the 2 million Palestinians who still remained in what became Israel are unoccupied people. Yeah. We're occupied people there. It is occupied Palestine. So, interestingly enough, a lot of people don't know that at least 1 million of these Palestinians, when the ceasefire, you know, they stayed because the ceasefire, just throw a ceasefire, no more massacres for that 1948 in May, they are considered, listen to this, present absentees. So all of their lands, because they started fleeing the massacres in Haifa and Akka, we were talking about the Jalil, right? They started fleeing and ended up like my hometown. I mean, it was filled with refugees who were trying to get to Lebanon to fly from the massacres. Because they were only half a mile, or a mile and a half from their village and lands and goats and sheep and so on, Israel said, you're an absent. You were absent, and that land was confiscated for the use of Jews only. So no, we're not a free people just because there are 2 million brown-looking Palestinians there. It is not a democracy. Okay? My own family's homes and properties were taken under our noses to be given to Jewish immigrants only. This is apartheid, this is racism, this is settler colonialism. Yes. So I just want to bring that up. It's a reality. Let's say what it is. Whether it is the Native American and the Mexican who is under settler occupation, it's all the same. We have all to be equal, no apartheid, no discrimination. Amen.
Okay, so feel free to pass or only answer this to whatever extent is appropriate for you. Because I'm curious, do you feel like you have anything in your own family history that is an echo of or that makes you relate to Rola's family?
Yeah. I'm half Mexican, half Chamorro. Chamorro is the native people of Guam, the island. And I don't know a lot about my history because my family doesn't really know a lot about our history. We just became part of, we became so-called U.S. citizens while they just hoarded the island of Guam as a military base in the US and disconnected us from our history and from our culture. So I don't know a whole lot, but I know that's why there's a connection, because there's a reason why I don't know a whole lot. Settler colonialism, and that's the theft of land.
Military bases.
Yeah.
So there is that connection.
So this may be beyond the scope of something you can answer, but when this woman was talking about, the Palestinian population of Israel within, the citizens of that country. So why, I wonder, does the BDS movement boycott that population from taking steps to end the occupation, to end the war in Gaza? I mean, I'm part of a group called Friends of Standing Together. Standing Together is a group of Palestinian and Jewish Israelis that work to end the occupation and end the wars, and yet the organization is boycotted. Are you able to address that?
I could somewhat. Now, the part, for quite a few years, as you know, there were groups of Arab Israelis and Jewish Israelis and who had dialogue groups. There'd be joint projects. Sometimes people in the occupied, territory. People listen to each other's stories. There are actually comparable groups here in the United States between those of Arab background and Jewish background. But what many Palestinians began to think was that, hey, this is making, aren't we nice and liberal that all these nice people are talking to each other, kind of ignoring the asymmetry in power. So there was a move to sort of resist so-called normalization, even by Palestinians who are among the initiators of these initial efforts. Now, one can make the case, and I would happen to agree with you, that I think some elements of the BDS movement do go too far in terms of not working with standing together or announcing that amazing joint Israeli-Palestinian documentary that won the Academy Award this past year, and other things. But I think it does come from that kind of sensitivity. Many people say it was comparable to, saying, for whites and blacks in South Africa doing all these nice joint projects together, but ignoring, ignoring the apartheid system as it went. So that's sort of. Yeah, again, so I'm trying to explain kind of the logic behind it, but I do happen to agree with you that standing together as a good group and these kind of efforts should be supported. But again, understanding that context.
Oh, you want to?
Hey, really, this question is for both of y'all, and thank y'all. As a Jewish person, I appreciate what you said, Dr. Zunes, about how some Jewish people have so much trauma over the Holocaust and the pogroms and things like that, that it's easy for them to, get carried away and be totally against any kind of Palestinian liberation. But I do think it comes from a sense of real privilege, and that there has to be a recognition that, hey, no matter, this is a real problem, just the way, I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and the way I saw people who were just flat out racist and actually literally believed that black people were terrible, beastly animals that would be happy to rape them, and so forth, and how that's not true. So I do think, there's a whole lot of privilege that accrues to, especially to Ashkenazi Jews in our country, which that's my background. And we have been a very, very successful minority in the United States and never faced any legal, any legal ghettoization or things like that. But just to cut to the chase instead of going to the whole history, I'd like to know how y'all feel that this kind of, this kind of grace slack could be extended to Palestinian, Muslim, and Arab people who, especially after, there have been decades of horrible treatment and occupation, not only in Palestine, but in other parts of West Asia. And also, especially since October 7th, how come there or what do y'all recommend so that there would be more understanding of why some Muslim, Arab, and especially Palestinian people would, say things like, hey, this was justified, or I'm not going to condemn Hamas, or whatever they might say, so that we can all understand that there's so much trauma going on. This is an ongoing trauma. There are probably being people killed right now all over Palestinian, just all over Palestine, just as we speak. And
And Israel.
Thank you for that. I think first of all, one thing we've learned about intersectionalities is that most people are part of what we might call the oppressed and the oppressor groups, in very different categories. We need to recognize institutionalized anti-Semitism and the
Islamophobia.
And
Yeah, there you go.
Islamophobia
Thank
and
you.
everything else, just as we recognize the privilege that certain white Jews at least have in this country as well. But it's important to understand the trauma and also just understand the rage. I mean, those of us who are old enough to remember the Vietnam War, speaking of genocidal wars, we remember just the rage we felt about the napalming the children, everything else, to the point there are people who were, overly romanticize the communists, or who, there'll be a tendency, I think, sometimes to flip in certain ways to rationalize for things, including, so just so we know some otherwise progressive people who will rationalize for Hamas terrorism, we have some good liberal, progressive, even democratic socialist Jews who will rationalize for what Israel's
terrorism.
And we need to really understand.
Israel's terrorism, right?
Yeah,
right.
That's state terrorism. Yeah. And I'm afraid to call that terrorism too.
Yeah.
But again, I think we do need to. I'm glad you used the word trauma because that's really important, and we really need to understand that. And how that can muddle people's thinking, and not just assume they're bad or evil for taking positions we may find offensive, but looking at the hurt, the fear, the terror. That's underneath that.
I understand. I guess what I wanted to address is now there's so many laws, for instance, in the California legislature that affect what people can say, and I appreciate the library for holding this, in fact, because there's so many laws that are coming up to censor what's said in the classrooms about Israel and Palestine, and how come there can be so much focus towards things people consider are unfair or anti-Semitic, yet at the same time all the Islamophobic or anti-Palestinian or anti-Arab things are just
okay.
allowed, or just okay, or allowed to, and there's certainly no laws. There are no laws enforcing against that, except for, I don't even know if they're covered under the different titles when it comes to being anti-Palestinian specifically, so.
That's a real phenomenon. Glad you mentioned.
And how can you explain that phenomenon?
No, I think a part of it is the racism that I think there is.
AIPAC lobbies
to be sure.
Change the laws in our states. Like AIPAC lobbied in Texas that if you want to be a school teacher there, a public school teacher, you have to sign saying you will not support BDS. That is controlling our First Amendment rights.
But there's also
as
Texas also
Americans.
has the laws that you can't boycott fossil fuels. You can't in fact, it was ALEC,
Right,
the right-wing pro-business group, that was at least as much part of the suppression of civil liberties than AIPAC.
They're all lobbies.
Yeah, they work
AIPAC is
together.
one of the lobbies too.
Yeah.
And there are military lobbies that love Israel just as much as AIPAC does. I won't deny that.
Yeah.
And AIPAC's not the only lobby, but they're the ones who literally write the legislation in our states. That's crazy.
If you've seen the film Boycott, I highly recommend. They do also emphasize ALEC's role in the American Legislative Exchange Council, the right-wing pro-business group that has helped write these laws, because they can get a foot in the door around BDS with Israel, because they'll get a lot of well-meaning liberals saying, oh, it's discrimination against Jews, so here I'll support it. And once they get that precedent in, then they can bring in the, preventing, other forms of boycotts and other things like that.
Can I intervene for a minute and say that the BDS movement is not against the Jews, it's against what they're doing. Okay, so it's not against Jewish people or Israel. It's against.
not an ethnic lobby.
I want to just remind everyone that we have made
a group agreement that we are all going to allow everyone to finish what they're speaking. We care about what you say, but everyone deserves the right to be heard.
We do have a number of hands that have been raised and waiting.
Oh, wait a second, also, but Daniel hasn't had a chance to respond to my questions.
There were a lot of questions in there, Dora. There was a lot.
Someone who hasn't gone yet? Oh, they logged in.
Yeah, it was kind of loud. I can't even remember the question.
Yes, you did.
There was like a short version.
Okay, yeah, just basically, do you have any ideas for how we could extend the same, like I was calling it privilege, to say we have to recognize why some Jewish people might be triggered to say, hey, how can we also recognize the trauma that, or not just the trauma, but the ongoing injury that Palestinians, Muslims, and Arabs are going to that might lead them to say things that other people find extreme and want to infringe First Amendment rights even through legislation. Like, as an artist, do you have any, I don't know, do you have any ideas about that?
Yeah, I was going to say
Not a whole lot. I just,
Sorry.
yeah. I think just in general, I think we need to stop getting our feelings hurt in a certain way where like you, it's one thing I want to say, just a lot of us become very sensitive to these, you know, when it comes to like somebody talking about race and maybe what some people within your race might, you know, be doing that's harmful to others, and it makes it look bad upon yourself. And to take offense when somebody says, well, okay, well, I'm not saying everybody, but these are still valid reasons for me to use these words, even if they come off a little radical. And everything, a lot of what I wrote in my book is just that. It's more radical. It's in your face. And if you're having a hard time reading it or taking in those words or having me speak these words out loud, it's because you have a problem with yourself and the liberation of the entire world and the people that are being oppressed and murdered in genocide.
I'm sorry, I know that we want this conversation to go on and on, but I would like to give everyone an opportunity to purchase Daniel's book or any of the other books and get it signed.
Can we finish with optimistic?
No, we don't really want that actually. Sorry, that's not
What
the
is
thing
your imagination for the best future for Palestine and Israel? Like tomorrow, Iran is gone. There is no more sponsoring of terror.
Iran is gone.
Everybody
Iran is
wants.
wiping up the
Everybody wants to live in peace. What is your? You don't want to peace?
Wrapping it up.
I just want to find
He's
out.
wrapping it up.
He want to answer. This is a good question.
This is not a good question. It's ridiculous. Get out of here.
I just want to know what is your vision for that time.
Thank you everyone for coming.